All right, and we are recording. So Jim Abramson and David Zucker, thank you so much for taking the time to connect today.
He shortened it to Abrams, just
Right.
Abrams.
so because he was writing a lot of checks and it got too cumbersome. So it's just Abrams now.
You can do that? You can
Yeah,
just shorten your name?
shortened it. Yeah, well, the bank still has him as Abramson, but yeah.
Okay.
And actually, David's last name is Zucker.
Yeah. What
You're
did I
right.
say?
You said Zucker.
I said Zucker.
Yeah,
Zucker.
and it used to be Zuckerman.
Ah, wow. I didn't know you could change your name. That's interesting.
Well,
Uh,
I didn't change it. This was changed, sometime around
Generation.
the period of the Czar. Yeah.
wow. So thank you both so much for taking the time to connect today. For those who don't know, Jim and Dave are two-thirds of the team that came out with the movie Airplane, the very, very popular comedy movie that really invented a genre in comedy in
And
the
the most
19
important two-thirds.
and the most important two-thirds. That's right. So Jim Abrams, not Abrahams, and David Zucker are well-known film directors, producers, and screenwriters. They created the movie Airplane and also the Naked Gun franchise. Separately, for those who don't know, David Zucker also directed Scary Movie 3 and Scary Movie 4. So my first question is, David, so you just didn't want Jim to join you with the scary movies? Were you sick of him from Airplane?
No,
And
actually, we wanted Jim to do Scary Movie 3, and he did help with the writing.
okay.
So yeah, so Jim was involved in Scary 3, not in 4. But we just kind of mix and match when somebody's available, and they come in and out. But we
Awesome.
always had a great collaboration.
Got it. Okay, so I was totally wrong about that. What's the most unexpected fan reaction or encounter that you guys have had because of the film? I mean, have you had someone come up to you like on the street that recognizes you, or like what's one of the more have you guys had any kind of bizarre fan interactions as a result of these films?
Uh,
Mm.
well, I mean, you know what I just thought of? I was on my way with Danielle, my to a mediation session for our marriage, which was running into trouble. And so on the way in Beverly Hills to the mediation place, I was accosted by TMZ, and they wanted to do a whole interview, and that was kind of an odd timing.
The I think the most wonderful reactions that we've gotten over the years is that every once in a while we'll hear from someone who's with a parent who's not doing well, and the parent will be able to rewatch Airplane with their kid and laugh and remember when the movie was new. And those those moments are very touching, and certainly nothing you ever anticipate when you're making a movie. But Airplane's been around so long now that it's got like generations of people who remember it fondly. And I'm sure generations of people who delete it, but there are a bunch of people who still remember it fondly.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And
And
it's
new
yeah,
new generations seem to be discovering it all the time. So
wow.
uh, we've seen on YouTube people watching Airplane for the first time, and it's kind of interesting to see their reactions. And these
Wow.
are young people, teenagers,
Hmm.
people in their 20s, and they've never seen it.
Wow. What are their reactions? Just
They
hysterical?
they they love it. They laugh, and a lot of the comments are, "This is so stupid." So, which is,
Oh,
I think, a compliment, for us. It's
In our book, we even say that when Airplane is clicking on all cylinders, it kind of elevates stupidity to an art form.
nice. Yeah.
And we never designed anything that way. We just wrote down what we thought was funny, and
Hmm.
it turned out that we did a lot of, uncovering of stupid, and that was just what our humor was. And it just, and people really responded to it.
What did that process look like? You guys sitting down at a table, just jotting down jokes, kind of riffing? Like, how did you come up with them?
We would, like for Airplane, we watched, there's this movie called Zero Hour, and it was a 1957 black and white movie, which was very serious melodrama, had the same plot. So we would watch that, and then we would just add the jokes, and that was kind of our writing process. And we would get together at like 9 a.m. and have coffee, and then start writing at 10, and go till maybe 2. And we just we're very persistent at it. Every day we worked at it.
So when you say you would watch this melodramatic movie and then write jokes for that
Well,
movie that you're watching?
what preceded Airplane was we had a theater that we performed in. It was called Kentucky Fried Theater. And we started it at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and around 1970. And we would, back then, we were the only people who really had access to videotape equipment. David's dad knew someone who had a video recorder. So we used to get together with Jerry in David and Jerry's basement and record spoofs of commercials and whatever movies at the time, just for our own enjoyment. But then we started to show them to other people and friends and family, and they laughed. So we opened a little theater at the University of Wisconsin, and we started to show the videos. We actually got up on stage and interacted with some of the videos. We called it Kentucky Fried Theater,
Wow.
and people paid $1 and they came and laughed. So we thought this would be cool. Let's move to California. See
Where we could charge $2.
Exactly. So we could see, if people, and with our ultimate goal of making it onto the Tonight Show. And so we moved to California. We opened Kentucky Fried Theater and eventually made it on the Tonight Show. But the way we would always get stuff to parody for the theater was by watching TV or old movies. That was always what we would do. So one time, and I think David, it's kind of interesting. We write about this in the book. David is just out on parole because Jerry and I had stopped taping stuff off of TV. But David had just gotten out on parole, and the first thing he did when he got back to the theater was turn on the tape recorder thing. And the next day, we had recorded this movie called Zero Hour, which, as David explained, was a 57 melodrama starring Sterling Hayden
And what we recorded this stuff overnight because we wanted to get the commercials so we could spoof the dumb TV ads.
Exactly.
But instead of the commercials, we started getting into this movie, the Zero Hour. So, and we thought, well, our first thought was maybe we could redub it, and then we thought, why don't we just recast the whole movie and remake the movie
Wow.
as with the type of actors who were in those movies of the 1950s.
Jim, where are your glasses? I usually see you with those NBA kind of protective gear glasses.
Yeah, well, these are actually
The
protective
new,
ear glasses. It's a long story. My eyes.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I just offended you, by the way. I was like,
Oh,
there
no.
might be a
Oh, you
Yeah.
mean, you think it's that easy to offend
yeah.
me?
Well, no, I you usually have your iconic
Yeah, that's not a fashion choice. I
okay.
have bad.
So I'm
Just
so I'm,
do-
so I'm insulting your eye problem, and I apologize for that.
No, that's,
Okay.
again, I have thicker skin than that.
Okay. That's good. I'll tell you about my problems if we have time. You were talking about how you were taking notes while you were watching a movie. Can you elaborate on that? Were you watching a film and then you were writing jokes for that film?
Right. So, for instance, in Airplane, when we were writing Airplane, we were watching Zero Hour around the writing table, and in Zero Hour, the captain, a little boy comes to visit the pilots in the cockpit, and the pilot in Zero Hour said, Billy or Joe, whatever his name was, here's something we give to our special visitors. Would you like to have it? And it's a little toy plane. So we did the same thing in Airplane, and then the kid in Zero Hour said, or the pilot says, "Have you ever been in a cockpit before, Joey?" And he says, "No, I've never been in a plane before." And then we added, "Have you ever seen a grown man naked?" That was the next line. So that was kind of the zinger
Nice.
that
That's
we put
good.
in. And then what that did was, we just wrote it as a line. It wasn't we didn't plan when we conceived the character that he would be a pedophile, but we just that line happened, and then we kept coming back to it. So he says, have you ever been to a gymnasium? Or there were some other lines, just suggestive lines.
So it was watching this serious movie and then
Yeah,
overlaying comedy over that you were able to juxtapose like this actual, serious plot with these absurd dialogues. And that was
right. Well,
part of the creativity of Airplane, perhaps.
yes,
If you want, you can actually Google 0 Hour Airplane, and somebody took the time to intercut many of the scenes from 0 Hour with the scenes from Airplane.
Oh wow.
And
Oh,
it's
wow.
kind of
That's very
interesting
cool.
how little we did.
And
Wow.
there's another line with Lloyd Bridge, the guy in Zero Hour, the air controller says, "Looks like I picked the wrong week to quit smoking." And so we gave that line to Lloyd Bridges as the straight setup. And then
Mm-hmm.
the next time he says, "It looks like I picked the wrong week to quit drinking." And then the next one was amphetamines. And then finally the kicker was sniffing glue. So we somehow we knew how to build a gag. We had learned that. I don't know where,
Well, we
but
lived
So,
we used to all read Mad Magazine, and in Mad Magazine there was a feature called Scenes We'd Like to See, and they would set up a straight scene from like a movie cliche, and then Mad Magazine in the last last square they would put in the joke, and it was something completely absurd or funny or warped.
and you guys grew up together, right?
Yeah.
We did.
but our dads were business partners
Wow.
in Milwaukee.
What did
And
they
our
do?
sisters, they were it was a real estate firm. It was actually called Abrahams and Zucker, A to Z Realty.
And that's how you guys met as kids. And when did you begin comedy? I mean, what was the impetus,
We, well, I'm 6 years older than Jerry, 3 years older than David. So we didn't hang out that much as kids, but after college, I was a private investigator in Milwaukee, and David was a construction expediter. And we ran into each other, and David said, "Look, I've got this videotape equipment. Do you want to come over?" And because we kind of knew that we all had similar senses of humor, and he said, "You want to come over and we'll mess around with it?" And so we did. And Jerry came in Jerry was just finishing up at the University of Wisconsin. So Jerry came in and we started messing around with this videotape equipment. And David, I think you were out on your own recognizance by then. So we
Yeah,
had,
I was free to do anything by
oh yeah.
that time. Yeah.
So we would get together on weekends and stuff and mess around and shoot.
And we roped in another guy, Dick Chudnow,
Right.
who we went to high school with, and he was a very funny guy. And so there were four of us.
But you guys weren't like studying comedy. You didn't go to school to become a famous comedian or movie producer. You had your job. You bought a video camera because you got one, and then you said, "Hey, let's have some fun." So how did you go from? It sounds like you were 20 something working as I think you said construction manager. So you didn't have like a Hollywood aspiration. When did that Hollywood aspiration come about, or was it like how did you go from a construct? How did you guys go from the roles that you had, which were totally unrelated to filmmaking, or how'd that evolution happen?
It really happened literally kind of one day, 1 week, 1 month at a time. And what we did was we did the largest entity that we could still afford to do. So the first thing we could do, we couldn't get on TV, but we could start our own theater. So we remodeled the this back storeroom of a bookstore in Madison, near the campus. And that was our first Kentucky Fried Theater. And then once we did that, and then we moved it to LA. We were very successful with a small theater. And then we realized, well, we could be on TV, and we were on the Tonight Show a couple of times and on some other national shows. But by that time, we had kind of honed our humor to the extent that, you know, we really thought we could write a movie at that point. And what we saw what was there at the time was Monty Python, Mel Brooks, Woody Allen. And we thought, I don't think we thought we were better than they were, but we thought we could certainly do as well. So, and there's no reason why we couldn't. And the main thing I want to say is that we learned on the job. We learned how to write movies. We learned how to direct. We did a movie called Kentucky Fried Movie with John Landis directed it, and in the book we say how we learned how to direct from him. We could not have directed Airplane if we had done that first.
You learned on the job. When and when did that ambition arise? Like when you were in your early 20s, do you think you
Well,
had do you
well,
think you
we
had the
don't know.
talent do you think you had the talent then to become as successful as you became, or was it like, there's this talent versus skill conversation. Like, were you always that talented, but you're like, oh, I'm never gonna make it, so let me do my job, and being a movie star, that's some wild dream. Or like when you started off, were your ambitions clear from the beginning? Like, did you know you had the talent necessary to
I
do what you
think
did?
I think there are three different answers because there are three of us.
Yeah, yeah. Tell
David,
me yours, Jim.
mine was, I was kind of, excuse me, going along for the ride. David, I think, was born with that kind of vision and that kind of passion. And Jerry, yeah, was somewhere in between, I think.
Yeah, Jerry was willing to go along
Yeah.
with it.
So
But
you
And
had the ambition, David. Is that why you bought the video camera?
that was I think, I was very ambitious. I wanted to get into film, but there's no way to do it from Milwaukee. So, and my dad saw how frustrated I was. So he said, David, I've got this opportunity to borrow this videotape equipment. So that's what happened. And then I then roped in Jim and Jerry and Dick. And then we started the theater really from that, just because we had that video equipment, and it was Dick's idea to combine it with live. So we did that, and then we found out, because we were doing this stuff for live audiences, we could find out instantly what worked. We knew, and so we could edit to the audience reaction, and we began to think. Actually, it was probably not until we got to LA that we began to think about what we were doing as how we were doing comedy, but we needed some structure and rules. And we say that in the book, that we evolved a series of 15 rules. And Jim's favorite rule is the 15th rule.
there are no rules.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's subjective. So,
Yeah, it worked for us. It wasn't necessarily for other people. I think we make that clear.
right. And the other huge, great fortune, and we've alluded to Zero Hour, is we knew how to write jokes and perfect jokes and time jokes well. We were clueless about how to write a story
How'd you know how to write jokes?
from going to theater for all those years.
And being trained by Mad Magazine, I think.
Right.
Yeah. And that's what I want to ask about, because you guys didn't go to Juilliard or whatever the school is. What's the school in New York for,
Yeah, for acting,
you learn
Juilliard.
you learn on the job. And so to learn on the job, I'm guessing you had to have a lot of feedback. Like, how did you constantly improve and get better and better? It sounds like the nature of the live performance is you're able to get feedback. Did you have like a lot of rigor around understanding what the audience was telling you and then putting that into the next show? Or how did you?
It wasn't so much rigor as embarrassment. If you get up on stage and you're not an actor and you're uncomfortable on stage to begin with, and you make a joke and the audience doesn't laugh, well, you either learn how to cut it or fix it. And you do that pretty quickly. And so it was years. I mean, we ran the theater for 6 years or something, and of getting up on stage every weekend, 5 times a weekend, doing the same show and sort of honing our art. But again, that was valuable and indispensable, but we never learned how to write a story. We never learned how to write a 3-act play. So when we came across Zero Hour, which was written by Arthur Haley, that was an ideal 3-act story with a guy at the beginning with PTSD who had to overcome his problem to get his girlfriend back. And so we sort of, we bought the rights to Zero Hour for $2,500. So we used their story in our jokes, and it worked out pretty well.
So
How did you learn to write stories? Like, what was the process?
Well, we wrote a movie after Airplane called Top Secret, and
Yeah.
it was a story, and it made sense. The plot made sense, but we didn't know anything about character arc or too much about structure. So that's why Top Secret didn't perform as well as Airplane did. But then the next movie that we did was Ruthless People, which was written by someone else. And then for Naked Gun, the 4 of us really paid attention to story structure and character. And so, and then we figured it out, and it worked.
Got it. So it was
Again, we learned on the job again.
Yeah. What was the jump for you? Because it sounds like, you guys were friends, you had your own jobs not related to filmmaking. You started picking up this creative hobby with the theater and with the camera, and kind of one thing led to the next. What was the moment where you guys, one of you or all 3 of you, decided to then take that leap, quit your job, and pursue this full time?
Well, I think that toward the end of the time we were at Madison, even before that, I had quit my job and moved up to Madison full time. And Jim had a job as a private investigator for a law firm. And it was, I think that was a big decision for Jim, whether to leave Madison and all that security that he had, and take this flyer as a with this review theater in a strange town. And but I think none of us had much to lose, really. Jim, you probably had the most to lose.
Yeah,
But
it's not like any of us were married or had kids or any responsibility. And I think a lot of it was that our other friends could find real jobs, but we never could. And so we sort of defaulted into the theater.
it's interesting that none of us were suited for anything else, really.
Right.
Well, it sounds like, what do you mean? You guys had jobs?
Yeah, but nothing we could do.
Yeah,
What?
nothing that it wasn't a career. And Jerry was planning to be a teacher, I think.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, hey, some people, like, these are careers, for a lot of people. But By the way, private investigator for a law firm, Jim, that sounds like the least funny job. If I had to choose, a comedian, if I'd say which of these people is likely to have a sense of humor, private investigator for a law firm's got to be the bottom of the list, right? I
Oh,
mean,
yeah, but
that sounds
actually,
dry.
no, it was a great deal of fun. Among other things, what I would do for a large part of my job was there were people who would phony up injuries in order to sue, make money. And the law
Yeah.
firm I worked for did defense work against those people. So a lot of my job would be like trying to catch the people who are phoning up their injuries, like get pictures of them resurfacing their roofs, playing tennis, or sometimes what I do is I would just canvass a neighborhood and I knock on the door and say, "Hi, I'm doing some research about your neighbor down the block. Do you mind if I ask you some questions?" And at first I thought, oh my gosh, people might not want to talk to me. But invariably they'd say, "Oh yeah, come on in. Let me get you some coffee." And they'd spill the beans on their neighbor. So it turned out to be a lot of fun. Plus, then I got to go to court a lot, and
And Jim would do jokes in court. I mean,
yeah,
everywhere that he went, he would make, manufacture jokes out of it.
Hmm.
one time there was a a witness who I was supposed to take to court. And she was going to testify about some injury thing or something or other. And of course I was told not to talk to her about the case. So as we were driving to court, I said to her, "Well, so when we get there, there's this cauldron and they'll put water in it and you have to walk around it a couple times and then dip your finger in it and give your testimony." So we got to court and the opposing attorney saw me walk in with the witness. So the opposing attorney said to the witness, um, "Did he say anything to you about this case?" And the witness, in a sense, said, "Yeah, well, he said something, there's gonna be a cauldron and I'm gonna have to, you know, dip my hand in it and say stuff." So I managed to have a really good time with that job.
Nice. Wow.
Did you
Wow.
get a laugh, and did everybody laugh in the courtroom?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
I remember my boss was pissed off.
Yeah.
As you're saying this, I'm seeing this parallel to Airplane actually, because you're taking this really austere, dry, not funny environment, right? Like, what is less funny than a court, than a courtroom in terms of the people involved, and you're bringing humor to it. And similarly, Airplane, that's what happened with Airplane, right? You're watching this movie, serious movie, you're overlaying it, you're juxtaposing it with humor, and it's like that. It's that contrast that creates real comedy, right?
And the more
I think that
serious, yeah, the more serious something was, I think the easier it was for us to put in the
Yeah.
joke.
Yeah.
and it wasn't, and it was instinctive. It wasn't like an intellectual
Right.
process. We grew up in the 50s and 60s where things
Yeah.
were black and white, literally and figuratively,
Yeah.
TV, that there was the good guy and the bad guy, father knows best, all that kind of stuff, the FBI. And so we always felt somewhere inside that we didn't have to take things seriously.
Got it. And you'd bring light to those situations. So just going back to the beginning, and we talked chronologically, David and Jim, of your career and the trajectory, kind of at a high level. And I want to unpack that a bit. I know you've probably done this a lot of times before, but I'm really curious about the story. I want to ask some questions that I don't know if you've gotten them exactly before, but kind of going back to that moment of, you guys graduate college, you're both work, you're private investigator, you're working in construction. What made you buy the camera, David?
Well, it wasn't that we had to buy anything. My dad just said his friend was done with using it in
Yeah.
his business and could loan us the two videotape decks and a big camera. And when nobody had any video equipment, if you wanted to do something visual, you had to get like Super 8 film. And at that, I think sound Super 8 film had just come into use around that time. So, and it was expensive, and you had to, wait to get it developed. And this was, instant, and it didn't cost us anything. So we, and like Jim said, we just started messing around with it and having fun with it.
So you're making little skits or jokes, and so you're playing with a video camera. And when did you then like show that to someone? When did you get audience member number one?
Well, the first people we showed it to were family. And I remember we did a parody, an overdubbing of the Milwaukee Bucks victory celebration when they won the NBA championship in 1971. And it was all, crazy, scatological, very edgy. And I remember we showed it to my dad. And he laughed so hard that he cried. He
Yeah.
was like, he was crying. He had tears coming out of his eyes. He was laughing so intensely. And so, I mean, these are the first, and then we showed it to friends, and those were our first audiences, just people who we knew. And it was
There-
because we
one-
got
one-
that. What?
One of the early things we did is we, a very popular movie back then was called Love Story.
Yeah.
With Ali McGraw and
Yeah.
Ryan
Ryan
O'Neal.
O'Neal.
Yeah, and there's a scene in Love Story. Ali McGraw dies of cancer in Love Story. And so we did a parody of a scene in Love Story where the Ryan O'Neal character is going to Ali McGraw, who's dying of cancer in the hospital. And she says to him, how are you? Or how are you doing and stuff? And he says, well, I got this kink in the back of my neck. So he's whining about a kink in the back of his neck, and she's dying. So we did that scene, and that made us laugh.
Yeah.
With the kink in the back, help me.
Oh, because he's whining about he's got a
Oh,
kink.
and how are you doing? And I've got a kink. Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. And she's
That's
dying
good.
of cancer.
Right.
So,
So he's saying, right. That's hysterical. Wow.
yeah.
That's good. That's good. So you got your friends laugh about it, your parents laugh about it. When did it like, what was the next step? How did you get
Well,
real
the
attention
next step
from?
was, we had a bunch of videotape, and Jerry figured out how to edit it, and we had all these parodies of commercials and some skits on tape, and Dick Chudnow had an improv group in Madison, and they were doing live sketches. So we rented a building, a cafe, the second floor, and built a theater there. And unfortunately, it wasn't zoned as a theater, so they closed us down a week before we were going to open. So we went to the Wisconsin Union, which kind of came to the rescue, and we took basically a non-portable show, and we had to make it portable. And that was another disaster because it was very technical, nothing worked. And so we were pretty discouraged, but Dick did improvs with the girl in the show, Lisa Davis, and so that kind of saved it. I didn't mention, we ran after 20 minutes. It was billed as an hour and a half show, and after 20 minutes, we ran out of material because we had never rehearsed the show before. Because Dick and Jerry were in Madison, and along with the improv group, and Jim and I were in Milwaukee, and so we hastily decided to call an intermission. And then during the intermission, we were debating how much money to refund the audience.
Out of the
Do we what to the audience? Do we what to the audience? The refund to the audience, you're saying?
To refund.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But,
So that, and then
Dick was kind of more professional, and he went out there after the intermission and did improvisational, sketches with Lisa. And so, and the next day in the school paper, we got a good review.
wow.
So, yeah.
And when's the first time you made money from making comedy, film, acting? Like when did it go from a hobby, friends, family, doing this or that? Like David, you talked about when you kind of took the leap to pursue it. Did you guys pursue this as a business before it was making money, or were you first seeing traction before you left your jobs?
We actually, well, we opened the show at Shakespeare and Company in the back of a bookstore, and we were
Right.
charging $1, and we made money, but not enough to live
Yeah.
on.
Yeah,
But by the
yeah.
time when we moved to LA, um, the three of us each, I think, chipped in like $2,500, and David and Jerry's parents chipped in about the same.
That was for Kentucky Fried Movie. Actually, for
Oh,
moving to LA, we each put in 3,000. So it was
right.
it was an investment of $12,000. And we had, and which was gonna last us 3 months. And then we had to open the show to start making money.
Why
So
didn't you?
what?
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you opened the show. What was that like?
Well, at first, we didn't have money for publicity, and we actually found this building that had been a drug rehabilitation center, and we remodeled the downstairs and put in a theater, and upstairs was an apartment where we all lived. So
Wow.
the audiences were tiny, so tiny that a couple times after we did the show, we invited the audience upstairs to take a look at our apartment.
Yeah,
So
it was actually before we did the show, just to loosen everybody up, because it was like there
right.
were 12 people in the audience.
Wow.
Almost more people on stage than was in the audience.
So you're doing these shows, 12 people the show, not really making a living, but getting some traction, trying to make a name for yourself slowly but surely. What was the next step that you hit?
Well,
What was the
the big turn then was reviewers started to come, and then the LA Times came. And the LA Times gave it, to this day, you'll never read a better review. It was
Yeah.
just wonderful. And from that day on, we never had an empty seat.
You guys are probably pumped when you got that review.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that was tremendous. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember that? Do you remember seeing that review and what your reaction was?
Yeah.
Yeah, we made a big blow up of it and put it in the front window
Yeah.
of the
Wow.
theater. But that was incredible. And that was,
It's in the book.
yeah, it's in the book. It came out July 4th of 72.
Wow. I mean, you guys must have been like, hell yeah, we moved here, and that like this huge affirmation, your first real kind of win.
There were little wins. I mean, we had great audiences, and people were loving the show. We were doing one show Friday night at 8 and one Saturday night at 8. And when those filled up, pretty much after that review came in, then we added shows at 10 on Friday and Saturday. And we even, for a while, I think in the summer, we were doing shows on Thursday and Sunday.
Right.
And
So
then
you're
as
building.
years went on, I think we were less hungry. We never did Thursday and Sunday night shows.
And when did that show? My last question on the story is when did you move on from that show into filmmaking?
Well, we after 2 years of doing, our first show was called My Nose. No, it was called Vegetables. And then we recast it. We did another show which we called My Nose, and we cast ourselves out of the show so that
Oh,
Jim and Jerry and I could write. And that's when we had the idea of writing a movie. And then we saw 0 Hour, and we said, so we started writing Airplane. So
yeah.
Airplane was written before Kentucky Fried Movie was produced, because we could not find the financing for Airplane. So after a year, My Nose, we gave up on the Airplane script, went back and, started doing the show again.
Yeah.
And then,
The
it
reason
was at that, what?
the reason we called the show My Nose is so in the LA Times, they would say my nose is running continuously.
Yeah, I see. So that was a reference to that. Got it. Got
Yeah.
it. Got it. Got it. Got it. What has I'm gonna make a hard pivot here. What has creating what have creating these movies and films taught you about relationships in general, working with people? At the beginning of this call, David, I'm bringing this up because you mentioned it. Oh, marriage counseling. I mean, what can you tell me about the trials and tribulations of your own relationships during this creation, and what struggles have you been a part of that you're willing to share?
Well, I don't have, I mean, I don't think it's been too out of the ordinary. I got married, we had 2 kids. Uh, the marriage didn't work out, but we're still great friends. And we still travel together as a family. So, the family's still together. Uh, but I don't know if being in the entertainment business has anything to do with it. I don't know if you learn, I mean, you can't help gaining some wisdom just from growing older. And
You're remarried?
no, I
Oh,
never remarried. I
didn't you say
still
you were
love.
at marriage counseling?
We went to, we went to some
Oh,
yeah, marriage counseling
post
when the
marriage.
marriage was going south.
Ah, I thought you
But
were
it didn't
recently.
help.
Oh, you were saying with team. Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it.
But
I had,
but really we figured it out. And my wife is a good person, and that's the biggest lesson is, don't marry an evil slut.
It's a good lesson. I
Yeah,
mean,
don't you
you
think, Jim? Yeah.
shouldn't.
yeah, I think
That could be your next movie.
what
Your next
happened,
movie could be "Don't Marry an Evil Slut."
Yes.
Yeah.
what happened with me is I got married a couple of years after Airplane and wound up having 3 kids, but um, somewhere along the line, she would say, I'd anguish over whatever we're doing on a movie or something. And one night, Nancy said to me, just stop tossing and turning. It's not my kind of humor anyway. And, and so, and so that, and in fact, when they do market research for the movies that David and I have worked on, basically, if you divide the movie into quadrants, boys or guys older and younger than 20 and women older and younger than 20, it scores highest in guys under 20, then guys over 20, then women under 20, and then women over 20. So she fit right in with it doesn't, it's not her kind of humor, but it did turn out it was her kind of money.
Ah, what do you mean?
What do I mean?
What do you mean?
She
Does this?
profited handsomely.
Okay. Yeah. Were there any jokes or scenes that you guys thought about twice, including in the film?
No, I mean, there's certain, there's a handful of scenes that didn't work, but I don't think we ever had any doubts. But what we would do is we preview the rough cut of the movie in front of an audience, a test audience, and we were surprised that some scenes didn't get laughs, but we shot more than we needed to get to the 85 minutes that the movie had to be. So we just trimmed it and cut the things that didn't work.
It's always interesting, right? Because I hear that, there's whether you're a musician or a filmmaker, there's always like what you think the audience is going to like, and then it goes to production, and you see how things actually turn out. So before the movie was released, what did you think was going to be the funniest part of the film versus what actually does the
Well,
reception show?
well, that was probably before the test audiences. I mean, but I think we were not surprised at much of it. We just, as I said, there's like a handful of scenes didn't work, or individual gags that didn't work. But it's pretty much like any comedy. You have to trim it and cut it so you get that pace, and to keep the audience laughing, it's easier to keep them laughing if they're already having a good time than to have a lull and have to start them up. And we found that if the gags came really fast, that became the flywheel that we needed.
Gotcha. Just the
The other,
momentum of it.
the other piece of terrific luck we had, or another piece, is that there was a fellow named Stephen Stucker, who was in our show, Kentucky Fried Theater. And he was this brilliant, fabulous, outed gay man. And back in those days, there were no really gay men who, he was the first outed gay man I'd ever met in my life. And I was 25 or 26 when we moved to LA and met him. Anyway, he was in the show, and he sort of, there's a part he plays one of the air traffic controllers, and he kind of carries the whole third act of it because his sense of humor is so much different than our play it straight
Mm,
kind of Robert Stack,
yeah.
Nielsen stuff, that he added a whole new dimension to Airplane, and again helped us make it across the finish line.
Awesome. So this is just like the momentum of the humor, and also the different, Jim, like you're saying, the different types of humor that complement each other. You guys
Right.
wrote the book, Surely You Can't Be Serious. And of course, Surely You Can't Be Serious is from a line of the movie. There's a whole skit. What's the mission in writing the book? What do you want people to take away from it?
Well, people would ask us about what, these stories, and we would tell stories from the theater, and people were so fascinated by it, and it's an unusual story. And then we realized our kids really didn't know this story. So this was kind of a legacy for us, and we wanted to be out there. And I think, and again, I don't think we really thought about that this would be a lesson or this had a purpose. I mean, it turns out it's very inspiring because we were such amateurs and we didn't know how to do it. And we learned, as I said, we learned on the job. And I think it is inspiring that anybody could probably do this if you set your mind to something. And what are the other cliches?
I mean,
Perseverance. Yeah.
so a lot of hard work, but there had to be some talent there, right?
We did have we had basic talent, and but as Jim said, there were a dozen guys in our high school who were as funny or funnier than we were, but they were able to find jobs at
But you guys had jobs. You're a private investigator and a construction
no,
manager,
no,
right?
I'm talking they were lawyers and doctors
Um,
and
okay.
heads
Yeah.
of state and
Wow.
all stuff. Yeah, so
Yeah.
we were just we were funny guys, and we pursued it, and we developed a set of rules, and we really it's a craft that you have to develop.
So, David, Jim, if you guys could go back in time or talk to yourselves when you were first starting out in the industry, what advice would you have given your younger selves that you wish you knew? If anything, maybe nothing at all. I mean, maybe
I
nothing,
gotta
maybe because it
say,
worked out well, right? Clearly, you didn't need more advice. Clearly it worked out well. Is there anything you could have told yourselves to, I don't know, have the journey go smoother, or anything, I guess the other way to ask the question is like, what do you think is the biggest advice you'd give someone who is in your position, who is in your position, or who is 22 years old trying to make it in film?
yeah, I personally have no regrets. Every time we failed, every time
Yeah.
something didn't appear to be working out, it worked out for the best. There are 100 examples in making Airplane. And in terms of advice for other people, I would say do it. Today, just if you want a career in film, you need a iPhone
Mm.
and a typewriter, or or not even typewriter, just something to write and start filming, start cutting, start scoring, start directing, and or whatever aspect of it is that intrigues you, and do it. Just don't just sit there, just give it a whirl.
And as far as advice to your younger, sorry.
And don't wait to be hired by somebody.
Yeah.
Right.
As far as advice to yourselves, I mean, I want to come back to that. Is there any advice you would have given your
I
sons?
would say, and Jim would probably understand this pretty well. I would say to myself, be more patient,
Hmm.
because you know, I knew we had the goods. I just knew we had it, and it just I was frustrated because it took so long.
No, I wouldn't say that to you, because David's impatience was a huge motivator for us. I
Yeah.
was patient, but
Yeah.
you know, I like being on the beach. But David wanted to be in the movie, so I'm grateful for every moment of impatience that David had.
Well, I'm not surprised that David was the impatient one and Jim, you were the patient one, because if I remember correctly, David is the one who had the ambition originally. And as you said yourself, like you were more along for the ride. Of course, you wanted this to happen, but you were, um, for better or worse, like you weren't as committed to like, okay, you know, this has to work and we have to be successful. It was more you were enjoying the process. And it sounds like his impatience, you know, because if you don't have any impatience, then you know, you could just be making jokes into the void forever and not really be gunning for the next step. But it sounds like, David, you knew that you guys had what it took. You knew you had the skill and the comedy, and you were maybe frustrated that Hollywood didn't see it yet, right?
Yeah, and nothing's changed.
Hmm. What do you mean?
I have 2 scripts now, which, you know, I can't, you know, I'm trying to
You're kidding
raise
me.
money. Oh, yeah,
But you're David Zucker. But back then you were a 25-year-old nobody. Now you're David Zucker. You made
yeah, but
Scary Moving Airplane. You're saying that they
Zucker.
won't. They don't take you seriously.
It's Zucker. It's not Zucker.
Zucker, yeah, Zucker.
right.
I have a friend last name Zucker. That's why I'm
No,
Zucker.
now I'm too old, so yeah. But
David used to have a dream when we were going through this process.
Hmm.
Dream at night that he'd be pounding the table saying, "You can't stop us." And I think he probably
Huh.
still that dream.
Wow.
I'm still doing that. Yeah,
But
I don't have that dream in a while, but you know, they just recently, you know, I wrote a script for Naked Gun 4 to, you know, reboot the whole franchise, and but instead they hired you know, other people to do it. So, you know,
yeah. So the moral of the story is you work hard, and then you still have to.
well, you still, but the moral
You
of the story
never
is
there is no
somehow,
there is no arriving. You just work hard, and it sucks. And then you die.
but no, no. But somehow it'll be okay. It'll turn out, this will be a blessing in disguise. I mean, it always has. So,
Yeah.
you know, when we didn't get the first airplane script done, it was a good thing because you know, it wouldn't have been as good. We needed to learn how to direct
Yeah.
from John on Kentucky Fried.
And I think it's a mistake to confuse working hard with it sucks, because working
Yeah.
hard is fun. It's great. We had a ball.
We had fun. It wasn't work. I haven't worked
Yeah.
in 60 years. Yeah.
But just coming back to the conversation, David and Jim, about how it continues to be hard now to get a script out. But don't you guys know all the people involved? I mean, you guys probably
No,
you know
no,
but you guys
no,
don't
no.
know.
They're all young guys. They're all in their 30s.
Tarantino's not that young. Rothman's not that young,
We,
right?
we don't know these people. We never
Oh,
went to the Hollywood parties. I don't hang around with any of them. We
okay.
don't have any connections. I've met all of
Oh,
them, but we're not friends. You know, we spend our time together watching Packer games on
huh.
Sunday. We don't hobnob with the
So
Hollywood.
is
So
that
we,
a bear? So
By the
um,
way, can I just add, I haven't really been interested in the movie business for over 20 years. So
hmm,
it's not an issue I deal with at all.
yeah, yeah.
right. That's my complaint, and I don't think Jerry deals with it either. I think Jerry's kind of producing some things.
Yeah.
And he finds it difficult also.
Wow. My final question is what did you mentioned working hard. What advice can you give to the young people pursuing their dream?
Well, I get asked that question, and my answer
Good
is
ask.
quit now, you'll never
Quit
make
now.
it. Yeah,
Quit. Good. Okay.
yeah.
Well,
But if you can ignore that advice, you'll be at halfway there. So,
okay. So it's
that is to say, I don't want to be responsible for saying to people, "Hey, you can do it," because it's impossible. It's
yeah.
impossible. And we had an unusual story, and I think we were talented, but we also had a lot of luck. We came up at a time when no one else had videotape
Hmm.
equipment. We were able to get the theater in LA and a place to live, and we landed at Paramount, which was the best studio. It's the worst studio now, but
Well,
the best then.
my last question. So, David, your Twitter says you've never seen Avatar. Have you seen Avatar yet, or still never seen Avatar?
No, I've never seen it. I never
Okay,
will.
it's not worth it. I mean, the next one came out. It's like 4 hours long.
I
So
don't
anyway,
see I don't see every movie. I
yeah,
don't like movies that much.
yeah. Okay. So, David, Jim, thanks so much for the time. This was awesome meeting you guys. Really appreciate it. I'm gonna end this recording, and then if we can just 2 minutes wrap up, that would be awesome.
Okay.
All right. And